Hello, welcome to another episode of the African Narrative Podcast. I am your host, Femi Soewu, and today I'm diving into something that touches the very core of who we are, our names. In this episode, I'm going to explore why names are so powerful, why Africans should embrace African names, and how reclaiming our names is deeply tied to reclaiming our identity. Not only will I touch on the impact of the missionaries, the Bible, the Quran, colonialism, but I'll also discuss why modern-day Africanists should be at the forefront of reclaiming African names. I will look at the significance of leading by example, why it is vital to hold on to our African identities, even in the face of religious influences. Reclaiming our names is a powerful way of reaffirming our history, culture, and pride. And importantly, I'll discuss the painful reality that descendants of enslaved Africans often have no way of retracing their roots to specific regions or ethnic groups where their ancestors came from. But before we go on, if you are new to our channel, please hit the subscribe button and press the notification bell so that you will be informed whenever new videos are available. And if you are feeling generous and passionate about spreading the African narratives, you can also join the channel as a member by hitting the join button. I'm a king. Yes. So, let's begin by talking about why names are so important. A name is not just a word, it is an expression of one's cultural identity. It signifies belonging, heritage, and connection. Names are more than just a label. They are the first reflection of our identity to the world. A name carries with it history, culture, time, and place. It is a bridge that connects us to our roots, our ancestors, and our heritage. For many Africans, however, that connection has been severed and altered due to centuries of colonialism, the transatlantic and trans-Saharan slave trades, and cultural erasure. Think about it. When we call ourselves or someone else's by a name, we are acknowledging their history and in many cases, the story of where they come from. Names carry meaning, often specific meanings that can relate to family history, significant events, or even spiritual beliefs. Take, for example, a common practice in many African cultures, naming a child based on the circumstances surrounding their birth. In Akan culture, children may be named after the day of the week they were born, each day associated with a specific meaning and spiritual essence. In Yoruba culture, a child's name might reflect the hopes and prayers parents have for them, like Ayotunde, meaning joy has returned, or Uhuru in Swahili, meaning freedom or independence. The name is a reflection of the community, the time, and the aspiration of the future. Names are vessels of history, memory, and intent. Through the transatlantic and trans-Saharan slave trade, millions of Africans were forcibly displaced, and their names, amongst many other aspects of their identities, were erased. Africans were given European names to strip them of their heritage, their culture, dignity, and their connection to their ancestry. Forcing them to adopt new names was a way of removing any trace of their original identities. The legacy of this law still affects millions of Africans and their descendants today. Many African Americans, Afro-Caribbeans, and Africans in diaspora still bear European names. Names that were not chosen by their ancestors but imposed on them as part of a process to dehumanize and dominate. Names were a tool of control, tools that erased original identity. Enslaved Africans could no longer trace their ancestors to a specific African region or community. This has created a generation of Africans in the diaspora who struggle with an identity crisis, disconnected from the cultural histories of their forebearers. But even after the end of slavery and colonial rule, the influence of the Europeans and the Middle Eastern names continued to linger. Adopting European names became a way of accessing social mobility, educational opportunities, and political recognition. The more European sounding your name, the more likely you are going to be accepted into certain circles. And then there is this dubious role of missionaries in this naming dilemma. Missionaries, both Christians and Islamic, arrived on the African continent during colonial times, armed not only with scriptures, but also with a powerful tool for cultural control, the renaming of Africans. Take Christianity as an example. The Bible was used as a powerful tool for converting Africans to the faith. This wasn't just a spiritual transformation, it also involved a forced cultural overhaul. Many African converts were given European names like John, Paul, Peter, Ruth, or Mary as part of their new Christian identity. These names often replace the rich, indigenous African names that have been passed down through generations. The names that African children were born with, names that connect them to their ancestors, to their history, to time, to place, were now considered heathen or pagan. This wasn't only about religion, it was about power. The imposition of these foreign names was an attempt to erase African cultural identity and replace it with European norms. These names weren't just religious markers, they were markers of domination, a reminder that Africans are now part of a global hierarchy that placed European culture at the top. Just like Christianity, the spread of Islam on the African continent came with its own set of cultural shifts, including the adoption of Arabic names and Quranic influences. While the practice of naming in Islam is tied to religious significance, names like Ahmed, Fatima, Ali hold deep spiritual meaning. There is also a strong historical link between the religion and Arab identity. In regions where Islam became dominant, African names were replaced with Arabic names, creating a disconnect between African people and their own indigenous names. So in both cases, Christianity and Islam, the names imposed were not just religious markers, they were tools of cultural assimilation. While religion brought important spiritual teachings, it also contributed to the erasure of African cultural identity by replacing African names with foreign ones. But here's the thing, this does not have to be our legacy. While we cannot undo the centuries of cultural disruption, we can take back our names and our stories, and in doing so, we can reclaim our identity. We can honor our African heritage by choosing names that connect us to the beauty, depth, and richness of our culture. Now the question is, how do we do this? Well, the first step is recognizing the power of names. It starts with understanding that we don't have to be passive participants in the inheritance of foreign names. We can actively choose the names that reflect our identity. One practical step could be incorporating African names into your everyday life. For instance, if you are given a European or Middle Eastern name at birth, you could choose to start introducing an African name alongside it. This could be as simple as adopting an African first name that you feel connected to. Parents today can make intentional choices when naming their children, opting for African names that reflect African history, values, and significance. There is also the role of institutions, schools, workplaces, and governments in respecting the cultural importance of African names. As these institutions begin to value African names and tradition, they become part of the larger movement of cultural reclamation. And what about the modern Pan-Africanists and how they can lead by example? We need to see prominent Pan-Africanists, those who are vocal about unity, independence, and empowerment, leading the charge in reclaiming African names. Many of today's outspoken leaders, thinkers, and public figures still carry Christian or Islamic names, names that were not part of their original African identity. Professor Patrick Lumumba, Julius Malema, Joshua Mapunga, Ibrahim Traore, Ousmane Sonko, Brian Kagoro, are their names a true reflection of their cultural heritage? Shouldn't they, along with other modern-day Pan-Africanists, start a movement to drop the European and Islamic names, reclaim their African heritage, and lead by example? Modern Pan-Africanist movement must embrace this idea of identity reclamation, starting with names. If we are serious about empowering Africa, uniting the continent, and telling our own stories, then our leaders, activists, and public figures need to lead by example. When Africans take ownership of their names, they are not just taking back their cultural heritage, they are also sending a clear message. We are not merely the sum of foreign influences upon us. We are Africans. Our name reflects that truth. Prominent Kenyan writer Ngugi wa Thiong'o, formerly known as James Ngugi, demonstrated a long time ago that it is possible to drop the colonial name and still be relevant and successful. Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, Arikana Chiombori, Thabo Mbeki, Chinua Achebe are some of the people who have proven that there is not a reason why your African names cannot open worldwide doors for you. Your names are who you truly are. Can you now ever imagine a writer called Peter Achebe or Mary Ellen Adichie? And when our leaders are still going by names like William Ruto, Cyril Ramaphosa, Samia Suluhu Hassan, Paul Kagame, Felix Antoine Tshisekedi, Hassan Sheikh Mohammed, they are setting bad example for the rest of the populace. It is time for them to start leading by example. What do Felix, Hassan, Samia, Cyril mean in the African context? What you are subtly saying is that those European and Middle Eastern identities and tags are superior to your African identity. Reclaiming our names is about more than just what we call ourselves. It is about reestablishing our connection to our histories, our communities, and our ancestors. African names are a bridge to our past, but they also speak to our future. They remind us that we are part of something that is bigger than ourselves. They are the legacies we choose to carry forward. In this age of globalized communication, it is also possible to promote African names as a way of celebrating cultural diversity. Imagine a world where African names are as common in schools and workplaces as European ones. This isn't just about personal pride, it is about cultural pride and a broader societal shift towards inclusivity. The more we normalize the use of African names in global conversations, the more we promote the richness of African heritage and identity. Now, imagine you are in a supermarket in London and someone calls out, "Peter!" You look around and it's like, is that really me? Imagine the reverse. When Europeans go to Africa or come in contact with Africans, they don't suddenly start answering to names like Kwame or Thabo. They keep their original names, and people respect that. Why then should Africans be expected to adapt their names to fit European norms? Why should you have to become Peter or James in order to fit into a world where Europeans are not expected to do the same? There's no reason why an African man should walk into a classroom in Europe and have to answer John when his name, Kwabena, has meaning, history, and pride. That name connects him to his ancestors and to a culture that European names can never replace. This doesn't mean rejecting other cultures or religions. It means understanding that our names are a reflection of our pride, our history, our heritage. Now, some may argue that adopting European or Islamic names doesn't make one less African. After all, one can be a Muslim, a Christian, or practice religion without losing one's identity. An example of this is the current president of Nigeria, Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Those three names are practically saying he is an African, he is a Muslim, and he is giving due honor to his heritage in that order. The issue isn't with religion itself, it is about the subtle cultural identity shift that occurs when you take on a name that is foreign to your roots. When you take a Christian or Islamic name, you are associating yourself with the culture and identity of people who impose that name on you, whether it's through colonialism, missionary work, or religious influences. It is an unspoken signal that you belong to that culture more than your own. Pan-Africanists today have a unique opportunity to guide this cultural renaissance. They can become the leaders of a movement that doesn't just call for the political liberation of Africa, but the cultural and spiritual liberation of Africans everywhere. Having an African name strengthens one's sense of belonging. Whether you are in your home country or abroad, your name is a constant reminder of where you come from, who you are, and the cultural story that shaped you. It is an act of resistance against cultural erasure and a rejection of the colonial mindset that tried to devalue African traditions. Take, for example, Nigerian author Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. She's always emphasizing how her name reflects the deep cultural history of our Igbo people. Her name is a beacon of African pride and has never been a hindrance to our global success. In fact, it has only enhanced her identity as a Nigerian and African author. Names like Kwame, Zanella, Nia, and Chike are imbued with meaning. They reflect languages, traditions, and ancestral histories of our people. These names tell the world I am an African and I take pride in my identity. When African names are embraced and celebrated, they become a tool of pride. They are markers of resilience, continuity, and defiance against cultural subjugation. Reclaiming our names also allows us to rewrite the narrative, no longer defined by the colonizers, but rather by ourselves. Of course, there are many challenges as well. In many parts of the world, especially in the Western societies, African names can be difficult to pronounce and understand. For many Africans living in diaspora, this can lead to an uncomfortable sense of exclusion or marginalization. It is unfortunate, but it's true. People with African names might face discrimination or bias. Take, for instance, the Kenyan author Ngugi wa Thiong'o that we referred to earlier. He made a choice to reject his colonial name James and adopted his Kikuyu name as an act of resistance against colonial rule. However, this sometimes results in people mispronouncing his name or even avoiding it altogether. But hey, if we can pronounce Papadopoulos or Nebuchadnezzar, they should, by repetition, occasioned by us standing firm, be able to pronounce Anikulapo or Kambaraje. Of course, for many Africans, especially those living in the diaspora, carrying names like John or Emma are often seen as neutral and accepted in the global context. Having a European name can sometimes ease the process of employment or even day-to-day interactions in places like Europe or North America. It can make it easier for an African person to blend into these societies, avoiding the bias or barriers that might come with an unfamiliar African name. You might succeed in navigating the world with a name like James, but what have you lost in the process? It's a subtle but pervasive form of cultural assimilation that over time can disconnect individuals from their heritage. So, in conclusion, what does this all mean? The debate between African names versus European or Middle Eastern names is about more than just what we call ourselves. It is about identity, pride, and how we choose to navigate the world. We must persevere. Having a European or Middle Eastern name may make life easier in certain global contexts, but it comes with the cost of cultural erasure. So, the next time somebody asks, "What's your name?" remember it's not just a question about a name tag. It is an opportunity to wear your heritage and identity proudly. Thank you for joining me today on the African Narrative Podcast. Help us to spread the African narratives. Become a member and click the join button. Follow, subscribe, and comment. Like and share also. Stay proud of who you are, where you come from, and the name that carries your legacy forward. Until the next time, take care and keep embracing your African heritage. I'm a king, yes, I'm a king. I'm a king.